Oh my god, there's a spider.
Oh, don't worry, I'll kill it.
Don't kill it! You can't just kill it.
Why not?
Well, because you can't just kill everything that crosses your path and annoys you. Everything has a purpose.
Actually, I can think of some things which do not have a purpose. For instance, wasps. They just fly around and annoy people, and I have a personal vendetta with one which stung me a few months ago.
Actually, to be honest, I wouldn't mind getting rid of fleas.
I think both wasps and fleas have a big role in nature. I'm gonna go release Edmund.
Surely not everything has a purpose.
Ashley Rowden works with shelf after shelf of unnamed invertebrate sea creatures. He'll know if anything can go. These look like fleas. They don't look like they're much use. Could we afford to get rid of those?
Well, they look a little bit like fleas, but you notice their body's compressed this way rather than that way. So they are a different animal. They're isopods. And they occur right down in the deep sea. We can't really get rid of these because their role which they play in the overall marine system is they're scavengers.
So they eat flesh. That's cool, but what would happen if they weren't around?
What would happen if they weren't around is all that dead and dying flesh, as it drops, say for instance, to the bottom of the sea, would be left unprocessed. And then that will change the environment around where those dead organisms are. That change might then have a knock-on effect that will cause the death of other animals.
So everything matters, even
That's
fleas.
right, even things which look
even
like this.
flea-like things.
Even flea-like things. If you're swimming in the beach and in the waves, you feel sometimes a little sort of prickly sort of bite on your arms or your legs or even down by your ankles, and that will be a relative of this sort of beast. It's latched onto you and thought, I can get a meal from that live flesh, and will start just scraping away at the surface of your skin. They're not this species, because like I said, this is from the deep sea, but it's very much smaller ones you can find on the beach. These are not the largest of this type that we find in the seas. There are much bigger ones.
Oh my god.
This rascal. So it's the same group.
Is that real?
That is real. There's a sort of tendency as you go deeper for these sorts of organisms to get larger in size.
Wow.
Oh my
They're
goodness.
pretty.
Doesn't get much
big.
larger than that though, does it?
I think that I don't think that there are many species that are bigger than this. You can see their fantastic
Goodness.
legs here.
Beautiful.
So goes back to the word isopod, which means same leg.
Would it really have an impact on the ecosystem if we got rid of one species of, say, insect that we didn't particularly like?
The Earth is a system, and it's full of processes which are taking place, and it has components that are part of those processes. And if you like, the species, the animals and the plants are the components of that system. Maybe we can lose some, and we say that perhaps a system has inbuilt redundancy, so there are more things that are actually required to actually make it work. And so if you want to take the analogy of a car, we can have a car which has an engine which is held in place by 4 bolts. If we were just driving around town, we could probably take 2 of those bolts out and that engine would still stay on its bracket and the car would still drive. But if we went on the Paris-Dakar, we might need all of those 4 bolts for that engine to stay in place. So in times where we stress something, okay, let's think then again about stressing the Earth or the systems in the Earth that take place, then we're going to need all of those bolts, and that means we might need all of those species in order for the whole processes to work.
So it's better just to keep everything until we know what part it plays.
Generally in the marine environment we know very, very little, and so we should perhaps always adapt the precautionary principle and say, we really don't know, let's find out more and more and more.
Hey Tess, if you could choose to make flies or lions extinct, which one would you choose?
I'd probably kill off the lions and keep the flies.
No way, why?
I know, it sounds really horrible, but I think flies are probably more important to the ecosystem and stuff than lions are. I mean, if you think about it, right? Flies lay their eggs in decomposing bodies and stuff, and the maggots help eat it, and it's really gross, but imagine how much more gross it would be if they weren't there to eat the bodies. There'd be all these dead bodies lying around that would take forever and ever to decompose because the maggots weren't there to eat them.
If lions were made extinct, all the things they prey on, like bison and zebra and antelopes, they just flourish out of control and eat all the grass, and there'd be no grass in Africa. And all the other predators, like cheetahs and hyenas, they'd all eat lots and just be this great uber race of predators who would like end up eating all the Africans. They'd eat the Africans, Tessa.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good point, Polder, because
know.
it would only happen in Africa, but flies live everywhere in the world, so it would have a much more global effect if flies were extinct.
Just shut up, because lions are cooler.
Flies are cool.
They're the best. Have you not seen the lions? Circle of life.
Could you give an example of a species in danger at the moment and that's affecting the ecosystem?
In the marine environment, for example, large predators often play a very important role. At least since the 1950s, things like tuna have been very, very heavily fished throughout the world, and they're now at very, very low levels, probably at about 10% or 20% at the most of what they were originally. So we've got a lot less of those big, fast-swimming ocean predators. We have something else in its place to utilize the energy which is still there. Organisms like jellyfish. So we get then a system which might be dominated by gelatinous organisms, whereas in the past it was these top predators, these fast-swimming tunas, played more of a role.
Tuna aren't the only species being affected by fishing. Some of the fishing practices, like the wall of death nets, are really destructive.
Yeah, everything that's in their path gets swept up, like dolphins and anything.
Hence the name, Wall of Death, it really is.
And there's the nets with giant ball bearings on them that drag over seamounts and rip up coral and sea sponges and anything that gets in their way. But so what?
So what? Well, for the Earth, no problem, okay? The Earth, if you want to see that as one big superorganism, just carries on in just an alternate state. There's no problem as long as, for instance, humans are prepared to eat jellyfish rather than tuna. But ultimately, they might not actually provide sufficient energy for the current population of the world.
How deep would you have to go to encounter a louse of this size?
Well, I don't know precisely where this one came from, but generally larger organisms like this will have come from deeper, colder water in the hundreds of meters, possibly the thousands of meters depth.
There's obviously quite a lot of the sea that's unexplored. How can we explore that?
Generally we use ships on the surface, and then from those ships we will dangle a long wire with a grab or a corer or maybe a trawl on the bottom of it, and it's not very efficient. I mean, it's a bit like if you think about trying to learn something about what's happening on a farm by just going over the farm in a hot air balloon, trawling a hook or something, and you get one chicken and maybe you get a cow, but maybe you missed all the sheep and the farmer's wife and such like. So the better way is to actually physically visualize it with cameras and videos, or you can actually go down there, ideally with something like a submersible, and actually get to see it with your own eyes.
Useful little contraptions, aren't they?
They look a bit like helicopters under the water.
But most helicopters can't do that. That's why they don't call them underwater helicopters.
Hey Tess.
Yeah?
Who cares about the lions and flies? I just thought of the best animal to make extinct.
Okay, what?
Alright, if this animal was made extinct, it would have the best, oh maybe not the best, but a pretty good effect on ecosystems all over the world. I mean, it would probably run a lot smoother without this animal.
Really?
Yeah.
What is it?
You Tessa, humans!
That's so
Everything would run a
true.
lot better.
It
I know.
really would.
Do the lions and the flies.
It seems like exploring the deep sea is really quite similar to exploring outer space.
That's right. The people who are going down in the submersible have to go into a briefing room, and you're treated a little bit like an astronaut. You're sort of kept a bit isolated, so you don't have to think about what's going to happen with the submersible. That's taken out of your thoughts. And then you get into a titanium sphere, which is only a matter of about 1.5 meters across. So it's a tiny ball. And you go in there with the pilot and the co-pilot, and they go through all the different things you're going to have to do. So how you'd have to operate the radio in an emergency, how you'd be able to have to put on the various breathing apparatus. And you also have to go through the practicalities, like where if you need a pee, where you're going to go for a pee. And so you have to have a special bag in which you, if you're a guy, you have to insert your penis into that bag in order to pee, which is a bit difficult.
How long are you down there for?
Well, you're down there for 8 hours, you see, so it's a long time. So it's whether or not you can stay in a very enclosed space for 8 hours.
And not
You
pee.
want to go before you leave.
Yep. Well,
Just in case.
before you go down, they say, empty your bladder, and you don't take too much liquid, in fact. It's a bit difficult. You have to stop the submersible and park it, so to speak, and move out of the way so you can actually do it, because it's very, very cramped in there.
Is it really dark down there? Like, do you have lights so that you can see?
Yeah, the submersible will have very, very powerful lights. We can actually see what's down there, so that you can film as far from the submersible as possible.
If you had to bust out of the submersible and swim to the surface, how long would it take?
Well, you wouldn't be able to get out. That's definitely, you would not be able to leave the submersibles. When you're at 1,000 odd meters, the pressure is so intense that there's just no way you can leave and survive. But at the end of this week, in fact, I'll go and join that expedition and have a chance to hopefully go down and see for myself.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it is. Thanks.
Well, I, for one, am never eating tuna again.
Really? Why not?
Well, because they're just being completely overfished and overeaten and stuff.
So, after talking to Ashley, where do you two sit on the flea and wasp debate?
Well, I kind of changed my mind. I guess everything does have a purpose, whether it's big or small.
Cool, what else did you learn?
Well, we saw a really huge sea
It
slater.
was humongous. It was like that big.
Really? Yeah.